start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Prior to that, if we could have a moment of silence. This past month, Pulaski County Public Schools lost someone very special to our school system, and Sergeant Perry Hodge. Perry was a SRO, of course, at Riverland Elementary, and had served several schools over his time in Pulaski County Public Schools. So we certainly want to remember Sergeant Hodge and his service to Pulaski County Public Schools, as well as Alma Myers. Alma opened the cafeteria, opened at Pulaski County High School when Pulaski County High School opened, and myself and Mary Rash walked in the doors for the first time, and back in 1975 or 74, I guess, and she recently passed away, so we certainly want to remember the Myers family as well as the Hodge family. So if we could stand for a moment of silence, and then I would ask Dr. Cash if you would lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start out this season with a little bit of recognition. So, Dr. Sears, did you want us to go down front, or?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. If you go to the board, go ahead and put their position up front, place the other awards. And I would just like to point out that this is February School Board Appreciation Month, and each school in the division adopts a school board member, so that's why you have a variety of treats there. And I think the middle school put something out for each one of you, and so it's just quite a bit of stuff, and we appreciate all that the schools did to help put this together, and we appreciate what you all are doing. And I've got a statement here to read from the Virginia School Board Association about the School Board Appreciation Month.
Superintendent Appreciation Month.
That's it.
When you're living the dream, it is.
Do you have a good year? Something like that. You don't even want to be recognized.
Yeah, invisibility is a great superpower. Pulaski County Public Schools will join 132 other school divisions throughout the state to celebrate School Board Appreciation Month in February. Almost 850 elected and appointed school board members throughout Virginia will be recognized by schools and communities for their service and dedication to public education. The theme of this year's celebration, 115 years of providing leadership, advocacy, and support, reflects the partnership of the Virginia School Boards Association and local school board members as they serve their local divisions and advocate for public education with local, state, and federal leaders on behalf of all students. The foundation of student success is year-long leadership advocacy and support from our school boards. We're proud of our division, our School Board Appreciation Month. We're proud of our division and School Board Appreciation Month is the time to recognize and celebrate the accomplishments of our elected trustees. Pulaski County Public Schools is proud and honored to recognize Mr. Timothy Hurst, Dr. Paige Cash, Mr. William Benson, Ms. Becky Cox, and Ms. Penny Golden for their dedication to the faculty and staff and students of Pulaski County. Would everyone please join me in a round of applause for our Pulaski County School Board. Our next award is for Employee of the Month. The Pulaski County Career and Technical Education Center of Pulaski County Public Schools are honored to recognize Ms. Robin Donovan as the February Employee of the Month. Ms. Donovan is Career and Technical Education's biggest cheerleader. She keeps the building running smoothly, manages the budget and income for over 20 programs with varying needs, and ensures that every student, employee, teacher, and administrator feels supported and valued. Her energy and enthusiasm is contagious. We're grateful for her service and want to congratulate her on being recognized as the CTE Center's Employee of the Month for February 2021. Ms. Donovan, would you come forward, please?
Can I get names?
Up in the middle at the top. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
The Pulaski County Career and Technical Education Center and Pulaski County Public Schools are proud to recognize Mrs. Tara Bird as the February Teacher of the Month. Over the past 3 years, Mrs. Bird has built the pharmacy technician program from the ground up. She selected the Certified Pharmacy Technician exam as her program's industry credential, a nationally recognized and notoriously challenging exam offered by the Pharmacy Technician Certification Board. When schools closed last March for COVID, Ms. Bird found a way to offer virtual instruction to her Pharmacy Tech 2 students and worked with the PTCB to offer the exam through virtual proctoring. Due to her hard work, we now have Pulaski County Public Schools educated pharmacy technicians at Lewis Gale Pulaski, Carilion New River Valley Medical Center, Martin's Pharmacy, CVS Pulaski, and CVS Hollins. The Career and Technical Education Center is a better place because she works here. At this time, I will ask Ms. Bird to come forward to be recognized, please.
You can bring your
Our faces are. Thank you, See you. See you later.
Our senior of the month for February is Chayton Rollins, but football practice is preventing him from being here this evening, so we will invite Chayton back to our meeting in March and recognize him at that time along with the March senior of the month.
He needs to be a football practice.
Yes, that's
All right.
it.
Brings us to recognition of citizens. At this time, the board would be more than happy to hear from any citizens from Pulaski County that would like to address the board. If you would, please come to the microphone and state your name.
I'm a citizen of Dublin, Virginia. I reside in the Ingalls District. I'm a mother of 2 Pulaski County High School students. My name is Gina Payne. Here in the midst of School Board Appreciation Month, I would like to express my concerns with the proposed Racial and Social Equity Action Plan. This Racial and Social Equity Plan scraps the concept of equality of opportunity and replaces it with equity or equality of outcomes. Most people won't notice that this new concept has been introduced. Equity, equality, it all sounds the same. But they are not the same. Equity involves treating individuals unequally so that certain groups are given an advantage. I have 3 major areas of concern. The first involves the PCPS faculty undergoing mandatory equity training. The idea is that this training will reveal the inherent biases that teachers have regarding their students. It's fair to say that most, if not all teachers in the Pulaski County school system were under the impression that they gave grades based on the quality of work submitted and not on a student's racial makeup. Will equity training urge faculty to adhere to a more forgiving grade analysis for students of color than their peers? Those promoting equity would say that this is fair since the school board has already established that institutional equities, especially in matters of race, remain significant barriers in the Pulaski County school system. In theory, if certain students are given a more relaxed standard in grading, would not the academic achievements of this particular group rise, even if their actual academic progress did not? Statistically, the academic achievements of these students would seem to rise, and this would be considered a triumph for the equity project, even though no actual progress had been made. Is that really fair to those students? Secondly, I have concerns about the influence of equity teams, which are set to be established not only in the PCPS central office, but in every school in the county. What standards will be enforced by these numerous social equity teams? Will they all adhere to a social justice agenda in making their pronouncements, or will any dissenting voices be allowed? Thirdly, the creation and funding of a Black History Club by the school system seems biased. According to the Racial Equity Plan of Action, this club will be financed so that members can participate in 2 job fairs per year at historically Black colleges. Are other long-established clubs like the FFA or FBLA afforded this opportunity? And if not, why not? Will we fund a Hispanic History Club and provide the same opportunities? And what about those of mixed race? Shouldn't there be a mixed race history club? So before adopting this plan, I request that members of the school board answer these questions. Under the plan, every teacher in the PCPS system must undergo equity training. What will this equity training consist of, and what materials will be used? Will educators be disinclined to submit failing grades to students of color based on the unproven idea that the curriculum is fundamentally geared to white students? Will this retraining of PCPS faculty and staff be continued in perpetuity? How much will this cost, and where are the funds coming from? Who will choose the members of these equity teams? Will there be any room for dissent, or must everyone involved adhere to the social justice mindset? Will these teams have absolute control over all educational materials in our schools? Will our students be allowed to hold dissenting viewpoints? How much will this cost, and where are the funds coming from? Thirdly, how can the school system justify funding a club which is solely dedicated to Black culture over any other club? How much will it cost, and where are the funds coming from? Shouldn't a Latino history club also be established? And why stop at skin color? We know what this board intends to put forth next month, so why not a transgender history club? These are some of the queries that must be answered before the school system adopts this very significant and potentially divisive plan of action. I implore all of you, pause passing this plan tonight until all of these questions are answered. Because where we stand now, you are merely telling us we will have to pass this plan in order to find out what's in it. That is unacceptable. This community is entitled to transparency. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Would anyone else like to address the board at this time?
Hello, my name is Billy Williams from Draper, Virginia, lifelong resident of Pulaski County. I'm here today to discuss the Virginia Department of Education rules on the treatment of transgender students in public schools as a result of the Virginia General Assembly 2020 HB 145 and SB 161. that the Virginia Department of Education has set forth rules that public schools must create model policies for school boards regarding treatment of transgender students. There are several topics under this law, but I want to discuss the bathroom and locker room sections of this policy. A summary of these policies are students must be allowed to use the same changing facilities or overnight accommodations as those of different biological sex based on gender identity. To do so would not require any substantial evidence or that such identity that has been asserted for any required duration. School staff is warned not to question anyone entering a restroom. As a parent, my concern is with the wording of this law, as it enables the ability of a male sexual predator to enter the women's restroom and locker room unobstructed, unverified, and without any safeguard. Under the false narrative of transgenderism, the male would use the guise of a transgender person to invade our daughter's privacy, opening up the possibility of rape, sexual abuse, and murder. By the letter of the law, a sexual predator could wake up that morning, decide he now identifies as a female, and get total unchecked access to all female facilities. Students need not prove in any way that they actually are transgender per the policy. No diagnosis, treatment, or legal documents are necessary for students to assert their gender is different from the biological sex and access what's offered to transgender students. No teacher can stop them from following a female into the bathroom. No principal can prevent them from standing in the locker room or walking to the showers as our daughters shower and dress. As a father of 2 daughters, I have a very big problem with the possibility of the safety of my daughter being compromised in the namesake of equality. Any law that infringes on the rights of another is not a law at all. Any law that claims to be putting one person's rights above those of another is illegal and should not be followed. The Pulaski County School Board is tasked with implementing the rules so that transgenders may use the restrooms of their choice as to which sex they identify, and at the same time ensuring the safety of our children is not compromised. It is my belief that both tasks can be accomplished so that both parties are protected. Some examples of these could be the use of a single stall bathroom for both sexes will allow the user of the restroom access. The ability to lock the entrance door behind them will ensure that it cannot be followed into the bathroom. Perhaps placing a security person stationed outside of the entrance to the restrooms. This would allow observation and intervention of any possible crimes committed by individuals with bad intentions, or perhaps some kind of alarm system for duress that could be placed in the restrooms. In regard to school functions that require overnight stay and the use of showering facilities in our locker rooms, there should be additional safeguards put in place. A parent should be given notice that there's a transgender student who will have access to the locker rooms and showers ahead of such time, so that the parent can remove their child from this environment if that is their choosing. Overnight stays would place one adult in each room, and the parent and student would have the right to opt out of sharing their room with a transgender if they feel their safety is in question. Virginia law supports the prevention of student harassment and protection of student privacy. The Pulaski County mission statement itself states that our schools will provide an environment that respects every individual. Sacrificing the safety and privacy of one group of individuals in order to accommodate the wishes and demands of another is morally inadequate and a violation of a person's rights. A productive and safe school for our children is a top priority for any parent and school system in America. I ask that the Pulaski County School Board adopt fair procedures that respect everyone and will ensure the safety of all of our students.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board at this time? Yes, sir, Mr. Kraus.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here representing the Pulaski County Board of Supervisors, and it has to do with the transitioning of the middle schools to the county. And talking with Jess before the meeting this evening, I think a lot of this has already been worked out, but I didn't know that before this evening. But the big thing is that you know that the county is willing to line up and pay for the survey and do it on a fast track, so we don't need to wait till April for that to happen. And so we're asking that the Board of Supervisors, the school board, approve that this evening in order to give the county authorization in order to line that up. And naturally, you have your input as far as the boundaries. I talked to Jess before the meeting, but we're asking for that action to be taken this evening if at all possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Would anyone else like to address the board this evening?
Good evening. My name is Gracie Nodebart, and I'm a second grade teacher at Riverlawn Elementary. I just came tonight to encourage our school system to reconsider some of our newly implemented winter policies. Since yesterday we had our first extended 2-hour delay day, we were able to see how that plays out. I wanted to bring to your attention some teacher and parent concerns. The main concern is difficulty with scheduling, especially with parents. Childcare is difficult to come by, and not all families have someone available to be present for students to get off the bus or pick them up when we are extending those time changes. Students, especially our little ones, they're getting home late. Long days, strenuous learning, especially I know in second grade, we're working those brains all day long. By the time they get home in the evening on those extended days, they have time to dinner, bathe, and go to bed and get ready to start it again the next day. Not to even mention our middle school or high school kiddos who still have schoolwork to complete in those evenings. And then, it's hard sometimes to forget that these are still kids. And when we start, taking away those school days and replacing them with virtual learning days and then extending days that we come in on 2-hour delays, it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for play and for learning outside of the classroom and for family time. I also consider scheduling difficulties with students on their own who have jobs and other outside commitments, practices. It's difficult to adjust those things on a short notice, and I know that we don't have control over the weather. When we have to call a 2-hour delay, we have to call it. But we also have to consider when we extend that school day, there are other people outside of the school system that then have to readjust their schedules. In a custodial standpoint, in a pandemic, we're stressing this deep cleaning. And on days that we extend those hours, our custodial staff can't even get in until 4:30 after teachers leave. And then on the flip side, I know that we were told that if we had to close yesterday instead of a 2-hour delay, we were going to have to switch that Wednesday to a face-to-face day. Lots of families work retail, food service jobs that require schedules to be made well in advance. And when we are switching around those days, they're building their lives and their schedules around knowing that our Wednesdays are our virtual days, the rest of the days things are kind of taken care of for them. But when we're kind of switching around that days, it provides some difficulty with scheduling. They rely on as much of a consistent schedule that we can provide. It's hard to expect them to be able to change their schedule or find alternate care on a short notice due to weather. And again, it's not something we have control over. But I do think that extending those days and switching around our face-to-face days when we have those snow days is really difficult, especially when we have our Chromebooks and that virtual option available there for us without having to change scheduling times. My own personal experience too, my ELL population in my classroom is missing more days when we are switching around those schedules. And I don't know if that's maybe a language barrier because I know a lot of our call-outs don't cater to students who have families that have that language barrier. So that's one thing that even on the smaller scale we might be able to adjust. Where we're having to call those 2-hour delays or those closures, we can have that available to them because that communication can be an issue also. We also have to consider those student medications by later afternoons that can be wearing off. That makes for tougher days for our teachers and for those particular students, and tough bus rides home. Another thing on the teacher side that I kind of have to put out there is that this year, due to staffing and limited subs, teachers are encouraged not to use sick days and make appointments outside of that time, which I understand. But those times are limited. Sometimes we can't make an appointment until at the earliest 3:45. We make those well in advance too. 3:45 to 5 o'clock on the weekdays. Weekdays are kind of our space to make appointments. And that makes it difficult when we have to call a 2-hour delay and extend those days. Appointments have to be canceled, they have to be pushed back on already limited times that we can make normal doctor's visits or dentist visits for, not even just ourselves, but our kids. I don't claim to know the reason for the extending school days and switching those face-to-face days due to weather, but if it does concern instructional hours, maybe we could even consider just doing away with the 2-hour delays and saying, okay, if we can't make it to school by this time, we just need to get out our Chromebooks and teachers are going to have to adjust and we're going to have to make it a synchronous or asynchronous virtual day, whatever it needs to be. But I think right now, amidst all the craziness, for parents, for teachers, for you guys, I do feel that extending the school day is tricky. And I think that the most, like the consistency that we can give everyone across the board is what's going to service everyone the best we can. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board? Busy night.
Hi, I'm Ashley Bowman. I am in the Massey District. For as long as humans have been walking the earth, they have opposed change. We instantly bristle when faced with change. But the data is clear. We desperately need change, and change needs to happen now. Data is not subjective. It's purely factual, not based on feeling that has been so strongly expressed tonight. Just as 1 + 1 is 2, our data shows that our Black and brown children have been disciplined at higher rates and their test scores are lower. These proposed policies are clear messages of acceptance. They are clear messages that Pulaski County acknowledges that things have not been fair or equal in the past, and we are striving to do better, to be better, to accept and support our children as they are, not a sanitized version of themselves that have been changed solely to be accepted by society. This is progress. And really, as a community, how could we not support change for the better? How could we not support showing love to all kids, regardless of race, sexual orientation, different abilities, or socioeconomic status? Pulaski should be about inclusion of all, not just those born into the correct race. After all, Jesus' most important commandment to us demands that we love our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Sears, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to come before you and express my full-throated support of the racial equity plan that is going to be set forth. We do have clear documentation that we're lacking in many areas. We owe it to all of our children to be inclusive, to not live in a world where we don't respect and understand as much as humanly possible their culture, where they come from. We very much live in a world that has always been colored by the white experience. And we cannot go backwards, but this is a good first step in moving forward to make our schools more inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jill Williams. I'm a part of the Equity Advisory Team, and I've already had a chance to speak to you, so I'm going to be quick today. I also want to offer my full support for the equity plan that's before you. As we've talked about in the past, the history of schools, not just in Pulaski County, but across the whole country, shows severe underfunding of students of color has dramatically impacted the parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles of the children who our students are today. And if we look at, Ashley talked really nicely about some of those inequities that we see in our data today. I think if you look at that data and at that history and assume that the only way to solve those problems is for teachers to apply different grading scales to students of color and white students, I think that's assuming that there's a fundamental difference between students of color and white students. And assuming that there's a fundamental difference is, to me, the definition of racism at its most basic. To be sure, schools can't solve these problems on their own. There's plenty of other institutions that address this, that need to be working on these issues. But the schools are the systems that touch our children. The teachers especially, hopefully they're not touching our children too much, but the teachers interact with our children. My son, who's in second grade, looks up to his second grade teachers and thinks they know everything. And he wants them. He was telling me today that there's so many problems that he wants to be prepared to address, and he needs his teachers to have the understanding to prepare them to address these problems in the future. So I think as a parent and as a community member and as a taxpayer, I think it's well worth our resources to invest in this professional development and other parts of this plan. And for the record, I also am very supportive of supporting our transgender students. There's, I believe transgender children are 6 times more likely to commit suicide, and what we do in the schools could dramatically either support them or make them feel more ostracized. So I just wanted to voice here in support of that too today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Sears, members of the board, Candy Castelluccio, PCA president. I'm just going to keep this really short, and thank you guys for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight, and just let you know that the local organization of PCEA, as well as VEA and NEA, stand behind everything that we're seeing in these movements, in both the equity and the transgender. So I hope that you understand that they have the full support of our members locally, state, and federal. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I don't think there's anybody else left to talk.
I'll go in.
We thank you all for voicing your opinions. It's, you know, every month, I think every board member hears from so many people, and sometimes I make the mistake of getting on Facebook, and every time we make a decision on a policy or any decision regarding schools, whether it be going 1 extra hour a day or whatever it may be. And typically, with those decisions, there's going to be a certain amount of frustration within the county, and it's always a challenge. Every decision that we make, we will never please everybody in Pulaski County, nor would any school board. But what I do appreciate, whether I agree with your comments or I disagree with your comments, I appreciate you taking the time to be at a school board meeting. The one thing that aggravates me the most about most of the comments you see on Facebook and on social media is that most of these people do not answer to anyone. They will voice their opinions, and they will never show up at a school board meeting. And I've seen so many comments from so many people that want to voice their opinion on Facebook, and I've been on this board for over 6 years, and I've yet to see them attend a school board meeting. So I do appreciate everyone that came out tonight, everyone that spoke tonight, and voiced their opinion regarding matters that the school board is dealing with at this time. So thank you very much for your comments. That brings us to item D on the agenda, approval of minutes at this time. And at our January 12th, 2021 minutes have been provided to the school board earlier today. You've had an opportunity to review the minutes of the January 12th, 2021 minutes. Are there any questions or comments regarding the minutes of January the 12th? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes of January the 12th?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for January 12th, 2021 as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Porter?
Ms. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Hurst?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Ms. Cox?
Yes.
Dr. Cash?
Yes.
Brings us to the adoption of the agenda. The board received a copy of the agenda earlier. Are there any corrections to the agenda at this time? If there are none, is there a motion to approve the agenda for this evening's meeting?
Chairman, I move we approve the February 9th, 2021 agenda.
Is there a second? Mrs. Porter?
Ms. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Hurst?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Ms. Cox?
Yes.
Dr. Cash?
Yes.
Brings us to the consent agenda. The board has received a copy, of course, of the consent agenda, payment of bills, as well as personnel. Personnel, of course, is running right behind me right now. I saw a couple retirements there that I really was hoping not to see for a while. But I understand. Are there any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? He's already coached 3 games. At least.
He's probably coached every one of them a lifetime.
He may have, no doubt. If there's no more comments or questions regarding the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Porter?
Ms. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Hurst?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Ms. Cox?
Yes.
Dr. Cash?
Yes.
Brings us to instructional focus, and I believe, Dr. Sears, we have CTE this month.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and the faculty is on her way up, so tell us what they have going on.
All right.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I am here tonight to share a few of the things that have gone on in the CTE Center this year. And Dr. Sears, we can go ahead to the second slide once you get started. So I wanted to start by just speaking to some of the challenges that we did face this year. In the career and technical education world, there are classes that cannot be taught in a virtual setting. For example, I was not comfortable sending a student home to virtually learn how to weld and play with open flame. Just like I was not comfortable with our cosmetology students learning how to cut hair, because I know I wouldn't want someone working on my hair without having that hands-on experience. So we had to figure that out. In most cases, the teachers who teach our courses are the only teacher who teaches those courses and those programs. So in a lot of our classes and a lot of our programs, we had to have blended classes. So you would have a course where you had some students face-to-face in front of you, and you had some students on Google Meet learning from home. We had to figure out how to clean our shop equipment because there's only so many bandsaws that you can put into a classroom, and we had to sanitize them in between each round. We had to figure out how to offer lunches in our classrooms because we didn't have those shared spaces like the commons. Figuring out how to provide instructional material that applied in a virtual setting, that was another challenge that we faced. And our teachers figured out how to develop materials and kits to send home. For example, Mr. Hill, our carpentry teacher, used some wood that we purchased from the YMCA to put together birdhouse kits and send them home so that students would work on carpentry skills in their first level class and be prepared for when they came back. And then also figuring out how to provide clinical hours, which is a challenge that we're still working on. So in every challenge, you can look for and find the bright spots. And these are a few of the things that we saw this year. Our CTE faculty figured out ways to build relationships with the students that were face-to-face and through Google Meet. You heard about Ms. Bird figuring out how to offer our industry credentials with a virtual proctoring system so that the students who had worked to become pharmacy technicians could hold that nationally recognized license. Our CTSOs, who usually go out into the community and provide community service, couldn't do that, but they still found ways to stay relevant, which you'll see in a few minutes. Our school-based enterprises are still up and running. Cat's Patch was able to sell nuns this fall. And the Blue Thistle Floral Department is currently getting ready for their big Valentine's Roses sale. Our early childhood education preschool is operating and following COVID procedures. And our canine care is up and running, and people are able to bring their dogs for doggy daycare during the day. And our culinary arts program even found a way to provide a catering service. They worked with the Economic Development Office and put together boxed lunches for one of the companies that came through on a tour, so that when they left Pulaski County, they had Pulaski County is swag as well as food from our culinary arts program. We were able to work in virtual and in-person professional development, and the creativity of the faculty and staff in the CTE Center was highlighted throughout this entire year. So when I said CTSOs are career and student organizations, I just wanted to put the list up for everybody to see. These are the co-curricular organizations that occur within our classes. So the ways that our CTSOs were able to stay relevant, this is actually the Pulaski County Criminal Justice Color Guard, and they were a part of the memorial service for Sandra Hodge. Our DECA program still was able to provide t-shirts, but they shifted their focus and also provided masks for sale for the community. They also used some of our newer technology, the Promethean board. You'll see the picture down on the bottom right. That is the marketing class participating in a virtual guest speaker. So the person on the Promethean board is actually live and speaking to the classroom and is able to see them. Our FFA program couldn't go out into the community for community service projects, so they found something on site. Our early childhood education preschool program, Playground, needed some work. So you'll see they actually pulled the picnic table from the playground to their shop and repaired it and updated it, and then made sure that all of the wood carpet was spread out so that the preschoolers could play. Our robotics team has been able to compete this year, just like our athletic teams. So 2 weekends ago, they participated in their first robotics competition, and they will have another competition next weekend, or the weekend after next. And they've applied a lot of COVID mitigation strategies, so only 3 team members are able to attend. Spectators are not able to attend, but they are still competing. And our Skills USA chapter was able to participate in a virtual leadership conference that was provided by the state organization. Our internships are still going strong. On the left-hand side, you'll see all in-house internships that we have offered this year. So we have students who are employed with our school nutrition program, and we just got our first operations department employee. He started today, and will be working with maintenance and grounds, as well as our preschool, Dublin Elementary, Kreiser Elementary, and we have some students starting at Pulaski County Middle School this year. And then the center and the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, excuse me, are all of our other businesses that are currently working with our interns. And then usually I like to bring a crew of students to come in and talk, and I wasn't comfortable doing that this year. But luckily, I have a fully functioning TV media studio in my building. So I worked with Mr. Fox and with Ms. Pavon to put together a video to show you some of the creativity that our teachers have come up with. So our Fisheries and Wildlife program usually goes out to parks and works with the different spaces there. And when they weren't able to do that this year, they again brought it back home and looked at a walking trail that we had, and they have actually developed a sensory trail that will continue to be worked on through that class, and I'm going to let them do the rest of the talking.
Is there a link to the video?
Yes, please.
slideshow?
It is.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you had said it was part of the slideshow. It's a great video, I can see it over
The
here.
Century Charlotte Pulaski County High School will serve as a functional outdoor classroom for elementary, middle, and high school age. The Century Charlotte Pulaski County High School will serve as a functional outdoor classroom for elementary, middle, and high school age students. The trail will be designed so that individuals with disabilities have access to educational and sensory exhibits throughout. This is a co-curricular project for students from different classes, including fisheries and wildlife management, horticulture, carpentry, welding, engineering, life-centered education, and special education come together to accomplish the overall goal.
The knowledge and acquisition for native plants and animals will be available to those who view the trail.
Native plants will be tagged and there will be information provided for further learning. There will be exhibits that highlight different species that are found in the trails, ecosystems such as birds, arthropods, and other creatures of the woods. Once the trail has been maintained and updated, we aim to serve as a resource for all schools in the New River Valley.
The economic and social impacts of horticulture on the trail will serve as a conservation area for native plant species already present, and students will research for other native species to incorporate to add to the diversity of habitat. There will be native plant species added to the trail and surrounding areas. Attention will be given to plant species that will benefit pollinators through each season. Too many times wildlife are removed from gardens because they are seen as pests. But on this trail, we want wildlife to thrive and use what we have provided to their advantage. The project started with the cleanup and general maintenance of a trail located on the school's campus. This has been used as an outdoor classroom, but over the years, the condition of the trail has declined. The project's focus is on restoring the trail, maintaining the trail, and incorporating new details.
The fisheries, wildlife, and horticultural students will create exhibits that are educational to all grade levels, but also accessible to a person with visual and mobility impairments. They will also incorporate sensory positive areas with what nature provides, along with adding in different elements such as a wind chime that students can work with to create different sounds.
Working alongside the TV media classes, students will create visual and audio recordings that can be played, which will read over any of the words that are on display, along with going into further detail at each exhibit. This will help as an aid for those who are visually impaired and give detailed information to anyone who accesses the QR code.
The fisheries and wildlife students work closely with the life-centered education class and special education teacher, Holly King. Her students will talk about how it is to have mobility and visual impairments and what would help them if they were to visit the trail.
Students that participate in the maintenance of the trail will participate in workplace readiness training, problem solving, critical thinking, creative thinking, and collaboration.
They will be given the opportunity to develop something that benefits all students in Pulaski County Public Schools and eventually the New River Valley. Maintenance will be a yearly project with a new group of students taking a leadership role in the development and planning process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Angela. Brings us to information items. Dr. Sears, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First is our student school board representative update, Ms. Bailey.
Good evening, Dr. Sears, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I do have a few concerns and comments to make tonight. Since coming back to 100%, most students are very happy to be back in schools. I feel like especially the high school's done a great job with keeping everything safe and clean. There's hand sanitizer everywhere you look. Everyone's doing great with wearing masks. But a few people have come up to me and asked, have the cleaning protocols changed any since going back to 100% in person? And if so, would the school board make a statement on that to see if cleaning has increased? Also, regarding transgender rights, the CDC has said that teen suicide has increased just within the last decade. So I appreciate you all for knowing that respecting trans people's identities is suicide prevention. So I appreciate your efforts to move forward with that. Also with racial equity, as a member of the Racial Equity Committee, I fully support this. And I appreciate you all for wanting our county to not just be not racist, but anti-racist. I appreciate you all for guaranteeing that there's a safe and accepting environment for all students. And I think that's all, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey.
Okay, next, our budget analysis, Mr. Stafford.
Thank you, Dr. Sears. Mr. Chairman and members of the school board, I'll try to make this brief tonight. Just wanted to update you on our current budget through January of the current fiscal year. On the revenue side, everything looks good. Our basic aid payments are decreasing slightly now because they've been adjusted downward due to the September 30th enrollment figure that was communicated to DOE. Many of the state revenues that are funded through lottery monies are now coming in as of the end of January, so those will catch up throughout the remainder of the year. All of our major expenditure areas are well within budget for this point in the year. I've honestly never seen a budget like this before in my time here. Transportation, I will say that is kind of an anomaly because we have we have 5 school buses on order currently, and the cost of those will be over $500,000. So once those are paid for, that variance will come down. But having said that, overall, we're still, due to our decreased operating posture this year, which of course is just due to the COVID pandemic, we're just seeing some really abnormal savings in our budget. I gave you an example in the budget agenda item of as of the end of January, we only spent 11% of our fuel budget for school buses, which is just really unheard of. And that's just, the field trips that have been cut out, the reduction in routes, athletics, of course, that's ramping up now, so we'll see that increase more throughout the rest of the year, but still we're just seeing a lot of unforeseen budget savings. The projected county general fund transfer for January is $1,082,262. That leaves approximately $7,997,000 available for the remainder of the fiscal year. Just looking by comparison to the same point last year, we had $6.1 million, or 38.87% of our county funds available. So again, that kind of illustrates what we're seeing right now in this budget. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I think we're good, Mr. Zach. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
This is for later in the meeting, that if they add to your agenda for an action item, I'll hand it out now so you can have it before I do my operations update. It was added in the ninth hour. These are positive add.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
One thing I'll add to Chris's statement about fuel, the other thing that's changed for us is the fact that our out-of-district transportation has been almost non-existent between the shutdowns with those programs. So that's a huge, it's running around as much as we did.
Yeah.
Open work orders, they're 118. That's less than they have been. We are still doing a lot of things other than work orders right now, so we're doing pretty well at managing it right around 100. So I expect them to stick right in there for a little while since we have some other things on our radar right now. Custodians, to answer the student representative's questions, we sanitize all the building every night, no matter how many kids are in it. 100 or 50 or whatever, it doesn't matter. So we sanitize it and we clean on Wednesdays as well. So no specific change to the protocol. I will say that we are down a significant amount of custodians right now, probably the worst shape we've been in my tenure. I will thank HR, Ms. Jana Beckner, for posting our custodial openings on Indeed. I guess being a dinosaur, I didn't realize that was out there. But anyway, I apologize. It's amazing.
It is, isn't it?
We got 40 applications in one day. I haven't had 40 applications in 3 years. So I called Jack too. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Where did these come from?
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to have to sift through those, and we're going to work hard over the next few weeks to try to get back to a full staff. So make sure that we're able to keep up. But we're managing with a lot of overtime right now. Transportation-wise, it's been an extremely trying couple of weeks here with going back to 100% at the high and middle school. We had the other day was like the first day of school all over again. So, but we managed, making some adjustments and getting everybody here the best we can. Be happy to answer any questions.
I think we're good. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Okay, the school calendar, the board has been provided with 2 draft copies of calendar. One was a calendar developed by the calendar committee, and it's based more on our traditional 180-day calendar. The other is just a proposal to look at on what a modified calendar, sometimes called the year-round calendar, although when you start breaking it down, it's not all that much different than our current one, except you have 2 intercession breaks, one at the end of the first 9 weeks and one at the end of the third 9 weeks, that allow for some time off for teachers, some remediation for students who are struggling, some days for professional development, parent-teacher conferences, and those type things. It, I think, resulted in the summer break for students being 7 weeks and for teachers being 6 weeks. I don't know how feasible it would be to even attempt that, but the state has been pushing hard that we look for options that will help us bridge the learning gaps that have occurred since March of last year. And it was one of the recommendations that came from the Virginia Department of Education, so I just wanted you all to see what that would look like. Our plan is over the next month to present the calendar that was developed by the calendar committee to the various advisory teams and get their feedback before the March meeting, just to see how people feel about that traditional calendar. But if the board would like for me to throw the modified calendar in the mix into those conversations and get feedback on that too, I would be happy to do it. Or if you prefer, we table it for a year, maybe look at it next year, because, you know, our efforts to bridge the learning gap won't just stop with this coming year. We're going to be a decade trying to make up for the losses that have occurred since March of last year. So there is time to consider that and do something different. But if we want to move sooner rather than later, we can at least start having discussions with the various stakeholder groups that we have assembled to get their feedback on it.
Do each end up with the same amount of instruction time?
Yes, both have the same number, the exact same number of instructional days. But the benefits to the modified calendar, instead of having to try to do all the remediation and things in summer school, you have breaks throughout the year where you can try to get students in and do some of those same type services. And with the shorter summer break, then there's not as much loss of learning that occurs when you have a 7-week summer break with a summer program in there for students who struggle, as there is as when you have a 10-week summer break.
Dr. Sue, I know myself and Ms. Sullivan would be fine with having both calendars considered from the advisory team. I have no problem with that.
Okay, we will, I'll schedule meetings with those advisory teams, because I think our next scheduled meetings are around the next board meeting, but I'll move those up and try to have conversations in the next 2 weeks and record the feedback and get that to the school board members so that you all can consider that when you're making a decision as to which calendar to approve or which direction you'd like for us to go in.
Okay.
One more question, please. Does the modified calendar in any way change the practice dates for fall sports such as football?
No, it would mean instead of having the morning practices, if they had morning practice, but it has to be very early in the morning, which we have that going on currently, but more than likely even the early practices would have to be after school. So the practices that usually start August 1st would be occurring about when school starts, and it would just all be after school. Yeah.
I would still like to try some way to have Christmas break start on the 17th.
Okay, and I think after you sent me that the other day, I started looking at it, and I think there is a way to move it around a little bit to make that happen. I just haven't put it on paper yet. But
I think we've set that precedent of having 2 weeks for Christmas, and I think that a lot of people will still take 2 weeks for Christmas.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's on the calendar or not. And I'm talking about parents and students,
Yeah.
as well as some staff members.
I think there's a way to do it. I just need to go back and make that change, and I will before we present that to the advisory team. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a draft vacation policy. And this policy is applicable to 11 and 12-month employees. And the gist of it is that with the addition of 2 additional state holidays, we had to try to figure out how to work those in without increasing the number of paid days off for our 11 and 12-month employees, because it's already a very generous calendar for 11 and 12-month employees. So to balance that, what we are recommending doing is to we add the Juneteenth holiday as a paid holiday for 11 and 12-month employees, and we add the election day as a paid holiday for 11 and 12-month employees. And we remove 4 days And then we add 3 additional vacation days for employees who have been employed for 10 years or more. Basically, what that gets us is the 11 to 12-month employees are not going to lose any paid days off, but they do not gain any paid days off, even with the addition of the Juneteenth holiday and the Election Day holiday. But people coming on into some of these positions will have less days until they get 10 years of service. And that would then act as an incentive to hopefully stick with it for a little while if you, once you're hired with Pulaski County Schools.
I don't know what the answer is. I just think that that's an awful lot of paid holidays, vacation days for 12-month people. We're talking 37, 38 days. And when you added back the vacation days, you're still up at about 37 or 38 days. So there really was no real change there.
No, and that was our dilemma when we discussed it 2 years ago, was how do you take away something from someone?
I understand that, but it's just like you said a minute ago, it's a very generous calendar for our 11 and 12-month people. You know, you get right down to it, there's 260 working days out of a year. You take out that 38 now, you're down to 222. Our teachers have a 200-day college contract. Then our 11-month people, I'm going to assume, have 200 plus 20. But it's 11 months, so they get their retirement pay for that 11th month. If you're on 10 months plus 20 days, you don't get retirement on that 20 days. And I just think there needs to be some changes made in the vacation policy all the way around. I mean, you know, our teachers, they have 2 or 3 personal leave days. And if I'm not mistaken, somewhere it's written in there that they can't take those personal leave days on the day before or the day after a holiday. And I understand that. But I was very upset this past Thanksgiving. I had some reason to go to Pulaski, and I don't even know what it was, because the only time I typically go there is to school board meetings or to the registrar's office. And I came by the school board the day before Thanksgiving, and either everybody took an early lunch or nobody was working the day before Thanksgiving. Most of our central office people were taking a day off or 2 days off and having a week off before that holiday or for Thanksgiving. And I think that if we're going to just leave Christmas the way it is now, let them have the same thing as teachers. But let's put the stipulation in there that no longer can you use a vacation day the day before a holiday. And I mean, I just think we need to do a lot of work on our vacation policy for everybody. You know, when I came to work in Pulaski County back in 1979, and I asked somebody, at that time it was called professional days, I said, what are these days? And I was told they are days that you can use when you need to conduct business that needs to be conducted during the week that you can't do on weekends, i.e. go to a lawyer to close on a loan or something of that nature. Okay? Because teachers don't have any vacation days. So they gave them personal leave days. Well, 12-month, 11-month people have 5 vacation days. They could use one of those days to do that kind of business. But they also get the personal leave days too. I don't understand that. I don't know the purpose for that. I wish somebody would explain that to me. It's just 3 more holidays. And I think we need to look at our vacation time as a board and sit down and decide what we want to do. And if we leave it the way it is, fine and dandy. But I think it really needs to be looked at. I think we started to look at it a couple years ago, and it was asked, do this in closed session because it's hard to look at you guys that we consider friends and say, well, we're going to cut your days. But like I said, our teachers are working 200 or have 200-day contract. Our 11-month people have 215 days with their 5 days vacation. Our 12-month people have 222 working days. I think something needs to be done. Thank you.
Dr. Sears, I've heard from a few of the 11 and 12 month employees that this would affect, and their main concern right now is that they don't understand the 4 days that are coming out of Christmas, and they don't know why it's 4 days, and they're just confused. So could we, before we, I mean, perhaps Mr. Benson is right, maybe we need to sit down and reevaluate the vacation, but they definitely need some sort of an explanation as to where those 4 days are going to. I did a very poor job of trying to explain it and confuse them even more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine if we want to leave it alone. I'm fine if we want to change it. You know, this was something that it just comes up every couple of years, and I was hoping we could somehow put it to rest for a while because we never seem to be able to get anywhere with it. The bottom line is it's a generous leave policy, but we also have the lowest administrator pay in the area, and we haven't done anything about that in years. We know when we post administrative jobs, we can't hardly attract anyone to apply for them. And if we start taking away the perks that we do have, it's going to be even more difficult to attract people when we have openings. So it's a catch-22. What do you do? It's a good leave policy. I don't think anyone disputes that. But if we cut it and we don't do a corresponding pay raise or something for those folks who have been loyal to Pulaski County, what does that say to them? And if we don't somehow keep our benefits packages, you know, to make us competitive with surrounding counties. I mean, when we looked at the high school principal salary last year, we were $20,000 below Bland County at the max for the principal salary. So we have an extremely low salary scale for most of our 11 and 12 month positions. So I would say maybe we just need to table this for another year. Let's take a look at the salary scale, and if we can up it to the regional average, then we look at doing something different with the leave policy. And at least people are getting paid a salary that's at market value for whatever they may lose in other benefits.
I would be fine with that, Dr. Sears. If we could, that of course we'll be adding a little something extra to Mr. Stafford's plate right now. But he doesn't.
Well, I'll tell you, we're already starting to look at the salary scales because the new state minimum wage laws are going to hit us next school year if we don't adjust some of those salary scales.
Okay.
Well, I think that our administrative salary scales have been way overdue to be overhauled. And I can buy that, but I still think we need to look at it. If you want to take it for a year, vacation policy.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. That would give us time. I think if we're going to sell a change in where we're removing a benefit or we're replacing it with another benefit, i.e. more salary, then that becomes something, right, at least we can hang our hat on.
I can buy that.
Okay, so we will just remove this and plan to keep the same policy in place for 2021 and 2022 while we try to work on these salary scales and then propose changes at the same time.
Just a point to think about, a pay increase could actually cost you more than an extra day of vacation. But then you can pay them more benefits on
yeah, it's, I mean, we're gonna be looking at probably, 10 to 20,000 more per administrative position to get us to the regional average, whereas change in the leave policy was gonna be, if it was net neutral on the expenses, because it was the same number of days we were already paying, paid days off people already had. It was just structured differently.
Your comp, your FICA taxes and other, rest and so forth goes up, so it's a pay increase. Just something to think about.
Okay, the next two policies are, it is a way to increase, the personal leave from 2 to 3 for all non-11 and 12-month employees after they reach 10 years of service. And this, I think, was requested by the PCEA, and we were trying to figure out how to separate it from the policy for vacation days. So I don't know if we still want to leave this on the table or go back and revisit. If we want to table it as well. I mean, I don't know if we want to leave it for possible action or if we want to table it.
I don't want to table this.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Okay, so we will plan to have it on the agenda for next month then for action. And the fringe benefits policy is just what references the personal leave policy, so it requires some of the wording to be changed as well. Changing it back to 3 days of personal leave. And next on the agenda is a discussion to return to 5 days per week. We set this as our goal to be able to return to 5 days per week during the second semester. Jess and Chris and I have had some conversations, and we believe we have worked out with transportation. Looking at the timeline, all of our employees who are taking the vaccination should have it and have it at its full efficacy rate by the middle of March. So what we would like to do is to proceed with returning to 5 days a week on Monday, March 15th. It would still need to be the modified schedule with, because we still do have to run 2 bus routes.
That's something I just wanted to clarify. We have to maintain the current routes. We can't, even if we go 5 days a week, we can't go back. We got to stay on the routes we're on now.
Yeah, so
Is this because of the limited number of kids that you can put on the bus?
Yes.
So, I would just like the board's feedback on that. If it's something you want us to pursue, we'll start putting the formal plan together and getting notice out to parents, and working on schedules and how we want it all to work. But, as long as we can keep the bus route staggered, and it keeps the secondary instructional day a little shorter than the elementary instructional day. But that seems to have worked okay for us this year, but we do feel confident that we could return then on March 15th with staff who wanted to be immunized, having had a chance to have a second injection, and then wait for 2 weeks beyond that to get the full effect of it.
I think parents will be thrilled.
I'm perfectly fine with the doctor. I think we're ready.
I was hoping we could do it March 1st.
So there's a lot of parents hoping it as well.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
I have a question. How many students do we still have in the virtual academy? I don't know, Ms. Brush knows that number off the top of her head.
It's 750 to 800. We brought back over 300.
What is that? That gets us down below 20%,
I'm sorry.
that gets us below
Oh, yes.
20% of our student body, I think, we're right at 20%.
Is the virtual academy here to stay, like it'll be here next year, or?
It will be here in some form. We're in the consortium with Region 7, and we're still working out the details of that, and hopefully by early April, we'll have all of that ironed out and be able to present a formal plan, maybe late April, but, Ms. Cox is the representative on that board, and we met last week. We had a Zoom meeting, one evening last week to discuss that.
The initial plan put together is, takes us through a 2-year time period, I believe, on
Yeah.
that. And then we'll look and see how we are going forward with the virtual academy for the region south.
Okay, next, the update on Pulaski Middle and Dublin Middle. Show.
I'll expand a little bit on what Mr. Travis said earlier. We've been working with an attorney, talking to a lot of attorneys, and originally, it looked like there was going to be a lot of steps to get PMS I's dotted and T's crossed and resolutions written and plats made and deeds adjusted. It was originally looking like it was going to be late to mid-May, according to our attorney. But that was based primarily on the survey that he was trying to get coordinated for us. It has recently come to my attention today, as a matter of fact, from our attorney that through discussions with the county attorney and our attorney, the county has agreed to lend us their surveying company that they have on retainer and pay for the survey if they can do it faster than we were going to do it. I spoke to our attorney. He's on board with it. We're on board with it. So I don't think you need to take any action. We're moving to give PMS back as soon as we can. I'm effectively done in PMS. I have just some straggling things left in there, but end of next week at the latest, I think we can wrap up and get our stuff out. That has never been really the bottleneck. The bottleneck's been the legal and the survey and all that stuff. But we're agreeing to that scenario on advice from our attorney to keep moving forward with that scenario for PMS. So unless anyone has any objection to that, I think that's, as I understand it, that's the way we want to move, this board wants to move.
We will move the maintenance program temporarily to Dublin Middle School, so it may be longer before we can turn Dublin over to the county. But
yeah, I was going to talk about Dublin next. We have definitely moved some stuff to Dublin. And of course, the survey initially will keep the ag building at Pulaski Middle until we are certain that we are able to build the operations building. And I'll talk a little bit later in the action items. That's good news that might help that along as well. So unless there's any questions, we're cooperating with, through our attorney, the county attorney, and the attorney we hired for this acquisition this transition to move forward. We're fine with it. Sure.
What what operations are still housed in the basement of TMS? I think we had transportation there, it may have been a long time ago.
Yeah, no, it was maintenance. The entire maintenance operation ran out of the basement of Pulaski Middle School. We'd already started preparing to be without that basement. We moved the keying operation to the school board office. We put it in the hallway behind my office, so we really took over the whole downstairs now. So, and we're actually going to move and the PCs, all the controls PCs, the maintenance PCs. We brought those to the school board office as well, set them in the hallway downstairs. The only thing, we didn't move like the maintenance break room. We moved it to the old bus garage, and we moved all of the maintenance storage of what we had in the basement. There was our high-end tools, our expensive tools that we check out, stuff like that. A lot of that kind of storage, we took that to Dublin Middle. So
really,
we scattered out even more than we are right now.
Okay.
So that's all we really did. We scattered. We're getting out of it.
I hope we're eventually gonna have a centralized place.
That is my hope as well. I'll touch on that. Well, the construction market right now is unpredictable, especially around steel. We're trying to build an entirely steel building. So, I hope that things work out. And when we get to the action items, I'll talk about how that went well. So hopefully it bodes well for that other project as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
So what are you recommending?
I'm recommending we just keep moving forward with the agreement between the two attorneys. If you guys are okay with that as far as PMS goes, I think it's what the county wants and needs. It's fine with us. We don't have any objection to it. I think the county was just not pleased with our timeline that our attorney had arranged and offered to help with their survey and crew that they could design this, so we'll take it. Actually save us a little money.
That's right. That's
We
right.
don't need to vote on it or anything.
No, ma'am, I don't think so. I don't think this needs to be any kind of action item. It's just an update, tell you where we stand. When we're ready, the attorney will prepare everything, the resolution, the plats, the deeds, and we're just waiting on the survey.
I'm perfectly fine with it.
All right, we'll just keep moving forward.
All right, thanks, Jess.
Next, and I'm just asking for guidance from the board on this, we had decided during the first semester to not open up any of our facilities for outside use. And we had also said toward the end of the first semester that we would evaluate it again once we started holding athletic events on site. And so I just wanted to put that on there because we have had a request from a community group to use one of our gyms on a Sunday. And there have been other requests too that we've been kind of putting on hold until we had a chance to discuss it with the board to see what your thoughts are about moving forward with allowing some use of our facilities. If we're trying to return to normalcy, we'll have to return to that at some point. We can put it off a while longer, or we can go ahead and open it up to allow some use if that's the wish of the board.
Could we put it off till the end of the year and start it up again next year?
Yes, if that's the wish of the board, we could.
I would kind of like that idea. We don't know what's going to happen with the sports or anything. And we might get started and get shut down 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to go that way with everybody that's getting vaccinated, et cetera, but I would just like to see us wait until after the summer.
Definitely.
Do we have the, Jess, would we even have the ability to clean these facilities and to take care of these facilities?
No, sir, not on the weekend. That is an issue. If we had a group in here, say Sunday night, the example Dr. Steer used, unless we specifically knew where the people went and what they did on Sunday night, we don't have, our full staff don't come in really till second shift to clean after our students are here. So Monday morning, that's just the reality. And it's like that all the time, even when we're not under a pandemic. We have to come in and clean up after these groups. But it would be, it poses a possibility that we would have areas that we were not able to clean
safety standpoint. That pretty much answers my question. I would go along with Mr. Hanson. I'm fine.
Okay, just a few upcoming calendar items. We've got our next budget work session a week from today. My question is, if board members, would you prefer to do that here or through Zoom again?
Here.
I hate them soon.
I'm like Bill, I'm old school, I'm face to face, Zoom's not it, I would just soon do it here myself.
Or downtown, it don't make any difference to me where
Yeah, we go spread out downtown, yeah.
I'm not coming back till you cut some heat on.
I like it too.
Would you like my jacket?
I'll buy you a jacket.
That's okay.
I don't care, I'll go anywhere.
Okay. Baker, you came with in person?
I am, but I like Zoom too, so.
We do Zoom all the time, we have everything we do.
Oh, Lord. Penny, would you be okay as long as we have heat?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll come back, yeah.
Dr. Sears may be wearing shorts.
It was really warm when we got here.
It was. It's a little cool in here right now. So, we gonna do it at the school board office?
We will.
Downstairs at the school board office, is that what we're doing, or?
We'll do it here just so people can spread out a little more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, maybe we could even do it in the library here.
Yeah. Send us an email, tell us where to show up.
Okay.
I'll be there.
Okay, on Wednesday, and this has changed since it was put in the agenda. The boys' basketball game against Halifax has been moved up to 3 o'clock. Apparently, some weather's supposed to move in that night, and they did not want to be driving back late. So the boys' game will be at 3, and then the girls' game against Salem will be at 6. Our girls finished the season as the top seed in the region, and the boys finished the season as the second seed in the region. So those are two great seasons already for us, and we're expecting big things in the tournament. The state wrestling tournament will be Saturday, February 20th. We have a total of 8 wrestlers who will be going down, 4 qualified in the top 2, and then we have 4 alternates as well. They're only taking half the number that they usually do from each region, or we would have had 8 who qualified outright this year, which would have, best I can tell, is the most we would have ever seen had the tournament been under normal bracketing. And it's still a really good showing for Pulaski County Wrestling. They just had a great season.
Best in years, yeah.
Got the regular school board meeting on March 9th, and then the budget meeting to approve the budget on March 23rd.
It's the Hot Topic Conference in March.
Yes.
Yes, it is. I don't remember the date on that, though. Okay. I think that was it for the
Mr. Calendar items. Brings us to action items. Dr. Sears, the comprehensive plan goal for equity.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Equity Advisory Team met yesterday when this was presented last month. There were some questions about the budget. So we tried to put together some estimated costs on what this would be, and I'll just go over the changes. They are in red and kind of all over the place on this one, so we'll straighten that up if it's approved before we format it into the plan. But the cost for the first goal of conducting an equity audit, we just set that at about $20 to $50 per school. It's really just for whatever paper and supplies are needed for surveys, and most of that can be done online now. So that might even be a high estimate for what it's going to cost to do the audit. The objective of equity awareness campaign for faculty and staff members. There's no cost to that. That's really just sharing the information from the audit with everyone and making sure we're aware of what our data are around the issue of equity that we're addressing. Estimated cost, the professional development for next year, that is the cost list of everything, and we have two proposals, and the board members have been provided copies of both of those proposals. Ms. Williams has helped reach out to a number of people around to provide this type of professional development, and one is local, Dr. Grimes from Virginia Tech. Another is more regional. We spoke to three guys from it, and I know one from North Carolina. I do not recall where the other two were from. The professional development, the cost for that would range between $20,000 to $40,000 for next year. But we are getting $3.6 million in stimulus money, and one of the uses of that stimulus money is for services that will help educate students who are in marginalized populations. So our plan would be to use some of the stimulus money to pay for whatever professional development program has to be, whatever professional development program we decide to move forward with. The difference between the two programs is that the program from the Virginia Tech professor is a really good, solid program that provides everybody a kind of a baseline knowledge about equity issues and the importance of the work in equity. The other program also has a coaching component for school equity teams. That's how to do the continual work through equity, taking a look at all of your data for all the different student groups that you're targeting through your equity initiative, and looking for your learning gaps, looking for your attendance gaps, and how to work with families. It's a really good program. It seems to be a really good program. They've worked with a number of school divisions throughout the country that are about our size and have our same composition. And it seemed to be what the equity team preferred. But both would meet our initial needs, both programs. It's just one was a little more robust than the other. The long-range objectives that we had were to increase diversity of its teaching faculty, and the estimated cost of that is nothing, because it's no additional cost, because we already have the program to grow our own teachers. It's just working with counselors to identify students from marginalized groups, students from poverty, students who are multi-language learners, students who are just any marginalized group that we have in our data, is working with counselors to identify which of those students might have an interest in going into education as a career, and then helping guide them through the teacher cadet programs that we have, or through doing internships at our elementary schools, which we have a few students every semester. So it's really worth getting to know your students a little better and trying to encourage more to go into education. And we also work a number of job fairs every year, so this is just making sure that when we're scheduling job fairs that we look at participating in some where the student body are more diverse, to try to recruit teachers into Pulaski County. The next objective was to build an inventory of instructional resources and materials that reflects the diversity of the Pulaski County community. Once again, it's not an increased cost. It's just taking a look at what we currently do and making sure that we're using a portion of that to purchase materials that reflect the diversity of our students and the community in which they live. I put 20% here. It could be a little more, it could be a little less, but that's fairly representative of what population of students who are identified through the equity initiative, it would probably be around 20 to 25% of our student body. Could even be much more when you start factoring in the students who live in poverty, then we're looking at about 50%. So depending on how we want to take a look at this, 20% is just kind of a gauge to where we could start the conversation. And then the final one was to allocate a stipend. Well, the objective was to develop programs and support systems and school cultures that are steeped in equity practice and value the diversity of our community. And so we would allocate a stipend for a club sponsor to start a cultural awareness club and allocate enough funds each year for the club to attend at least one college tour per semester. The estimated cost of that would be around $2,500, based on what we typically pay some of the sponsors of our clubs and the cost of the field trip.
Dr. Sears, if a faculty member came forward and wanted to start an LGBTQ club, would they be allowed to do so?
Yes, they would. The high school has a process. I assume the middle school does as well for students to request that clubs be brought into the school. I think it would just require that they find a faculty sponsor. It doesn't necessarily mean that we would pay a stipend to anyone who sponsors a club that has started that way, but it's something that we could consider. The creation of this is just really help introduce the concepts around equity and start taking a look at our community and making sure that everyone feels a part of Pulaski County Public Schools. I think that is overall what we're trying to do. It's really just a simple concept. We don't want anybody to feel like they're unwelcome in our school. And we know from the conversations that we have that we don't currently meet that goal. We have students who feel unwelcome, who feel unappreciated, who feel like they're different and can't fit in and can't be successful. And we just want to remove whatever is causing those types of feelings and try to give everyone a successful educational experience.
Okay, so gay, lesbian, transgender students would be included under this policy?
Yes, the overall goal up at the top is that we'll eliminate the predictability of all student outcomes. That is our goal based on race, gender, elementary school attendance zone, ability, socioeconomic status, and/or languages spoken at home. And we could add into that sexual orientation.
I think it's up there with gender identity. Maybe we could put that in there. I think there's been a misconception that this is only for a particular race of students, and I want to correct that misconception.
I think that may be because in the last part of the strategy, it specifically
Which one?
says African American fraternities and sororities. It doesn't say anything else.
Well, we can change that. There is a Latino fraternity at Radford that we can include here.
Yes, we could just change that to community service groups, including fraternities and sororities and clubs, if that.
So if that's, is that the problem with the language, that it says African American fraternities and sororities? That people see this as only an equity program for African American people because of that language?
Yes, we could change that to community service groups and just put some examples of sororities, fraternities, Rotary Club. We would want anyone who wanted to work with our students in a mentoring type capacity to feel like they could be a part of that. It wasn't, the statement wasn't meant to be exclusive, it was meant to be inclusive, but I see how that could be interpreted differently.
It definitely can be, and, by identifying only one group there, it certainly is exclusive, in my opinion. So,
Is there any group who would not be able to come forward and make, request that their own club at the high school be created?
I mean, we wouldn't, I assume that if there a hate group wanted to come in and form something, then we would have to use some discretion to say no, that is not welcome. So we want groups that are there to uplift and help students succeed, not groups that are there to make anyone feel oppressed.
So Latinos, Hispanics, the Asians, or any, just any group that wants to come together and create their own club, basically. Or you
Yes.
could go through the steps.
To go through the steps and apply to have a club, yes.
That has been my concern, because there's some segments of our student body that I would not want excluded. They might not ever come forward to ask for that, but unless, by the language here, I just feel like if it's not a little bit more open-ended, they will feel like they can't even ask.
Yeah.
And so maybe a few more words and a couple more comments to fix that, where it is more inclusive of all.
Okay.
My other question is on the cost of the professional development. Do you see that as something that would diminish over time, or there'd be higher cost in the initial years and decreasing?
Yes, I do. I think what we asked both of the groups who gave us the proposal was that we would really like to have our teams trained, more like a train-the-trainer type model, so that we could have teams who felt comfortable enough with it to carry the training on, I would see that diminishing over time as we pick up more internal training, which is what we typically try to do anyway. We try to provide a variety of internal training, because we have really good educators here who have different experiences in these areas, and it's just a matter of getting them familiar with the curriculum and developing the vocabulary to be able to take that back into the schools and train other educators.
I think too, you're going to see recent graduates are already going to have coursework in equity, and so they're not going to need quite the level of training that somebody of my career maturity would probably need.
And just one other clarification. I know it was a concern voiced earlier by a citizen that we would be lowering their standards for grading. That is not the case.
No, I don't know where that's even coming from. There would be, actually, I was watching the video from the Virginia Department of Education, and I forwarded the link to the school board members today. You actually, by doing this, you're increasing the standards or the expectations. You're raising expectations for everyone.
And opportunities.
Yes, and increasing opportunities for everyone.
I have to say that yesterday, I wish I had the picture with me. Yesterday, I guess it kind of finally clicked that the image you sent me did not come through. So
Yeah.
I Googled equality versus equity myself, and gave me a picture of 3 guys looking over a fence into a baseball field. I guess the answer is maybe you should have just bought a ticket and went in, but there were different heights, tall, medium, and kind of a little short guy, looking over the fence, and they had 3 boxes, each one got a box to stand on. The tall guy didn't need the box. The short guy and the medium-sized guy still couldn't see over the fence. So that was equality. Everybody got the same thing. Everybody got one box. And then in the equity slide, it showed that the tall guy didn't get a box, so he didn't need a box. The medium-sized guy got one box, but that's what got him to be able to look over the fence, the bar. And the shorter guy, I'm saying guy, I didn't sit front, I don't know what it was. The shorter one got two, because that's what got him up to being able to look over that bar, or reach that bar. If we're talking about education, reach that bar. And that was when it probably clicked for me, the equity versus equality. That equality does not get everybody to achievement level. So with the language change, somehow or other, that is more inclusive of all groups that have been laid out in the comprehensive goal, then I don't have an issue with it.
Okay, thank you. And if it makes it easier, we can just, if someone's going to make the motion to approve it, that we approve the first 5 objectives and objective 6, I can bring back next month with revised language. Because that's not one that we really would have to start working on immediately anyway. The others we would need to start working on sooner. This is something that we would just start laying the groundwork for next year, but we could wait another month to start on this.
I think that would be most fair, because the team that put this together could come back and revisit the language without us dictating what that would be.
I would just like to say, when, and I've read through material on this considerably over the last month. And understanding equity versus equality is Becky just mentioned, it's how we look at things. When we, whether it be race or gender or socioeconomic status, it doesn't really matter what. In all honesty, here, we're talking about making sure that everybody starts on a level playing field, that everybody has the same actual chances from the very beginning. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic here in Pulaski County, myself, along with some board members, delivered learning packets out to the students and families. And, a lot of those families, I didn't know whether it was a African-American child, or if it was a Latino child, or if it was a Caucasian. But I knew that in a lot of those situations, there were certainly challenges in those homes. And I didn't see a color, a skin color, and I didn't see a gender. I just knew with talking to parents and seeing the circumstances that not every child is starting on a level playing field. So I look at this as a way to try to do everything we can. We can't truly control all outcomes, but we can do everything that we can to make sure that a child has a better opportunity of a better outcome. And I think that's our responsibility as a board. Just as Becky said, I would be fine with a more inclusive language, and the one particular item upstairs, I'm perfectly fine with this.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, then I would ask that the board approve the goal and objectives 1 through 5, and I will take objective 6 back to the equity advisory team to discuss how to word that to represent to be inclusive of all the groups that we're trying to reach through our equity initiative.
Okay. 1 through 5 with the wording changed on number 6.
Last one was the language about African American person. Well, I think there's several things that I'm not fine with on here wording wise, and that does include the 4th one. I mean, and it also states that we're funding
We do that already.
We do, we've had a Black History Club.
Yeah. And currently, right now, as far as Dr. Sears, the number of African-American teachers in Pulaski County Public Schools, do you know that number?
I don't know the exact number, but it is lower than, much lower than our,
It doesn't represent the population of Pulaski County, no, sir. And it should represent the population of Pulaski County. We need to look more like the community in our school system. So,
Yeah, that's what I'm looking to do. Like you said, the equality and the equity of all students, not any color, transgender. It's all of our kids. We've got to look, we've got to look out.
I think we're currently recruiting at HBCUs, are we?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you
I
said,
said we're
Dr.
not
Taylor.
currently recruiting at HBCUs.
We are scheduled to do a large-scale job fair coming up that includes one or two with all the virtual job fairs this year. Is that correct, Jennifer?
Yes. I can send you a list of those job fairs we're participating in.
Well, no, I'm just saying, I think we've recruited all colleges and universities that have an teacher education program.
Yes, in this
So
area.
we haven't historically recruited at these, but we do have a teacher shortage, right? It's gonna be hard to find some of the people we need, so I think this is expanding our scope. And I don't know how else to word it, because we don't have any colleges that are called historically white colleges and universities, that's all of them. We're just expanding our recruiting into HBCU.
We don't have colleges that represent the Latino population.
That's what they're called.
Specifically.
No, but, and historically, black colleges and universities doesn't mean that it's just African-American students who go there. That's just a designation that because these colleges and universities have much more diversity, that's historically what they have been called. So,
are there any other comments? Hearing none, the board has heard the recommendation from Dr. Sears. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve sections 1 through 5 of the comprehensive plan goal for equity.
The motion's been made by Dr. Cash. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Porter?
Ms. Golden? No. Mr. Hurst?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Ms. Cox?
Yes.
Dr. Cash?
Yes.
That brings us to, I believe we had an item come up late on the agenda. Mr. Shaw?
Yes, sir. Hopefully this will be really quick. The bids for the CTE welding lab and the switchgear replacement in the CTE building came in today. They came in under budget. The bid came in under budget. We had a very good showing of bids. We had 6 actual bids and 1 bid that came in 2 minutes late that we had to not accept, but that's still 7 responses. 818,277 is the number. We were carrying, I think, 900,000 in the capital maintenance project for this, so we're under budget. So my recommendation to the board tonight is that you approve the project to move forward at the number presented here.
Do we have a bidding firm?
Yes, it's F&S Building Solutions.
F&S?
F&S. It's in that particular document up at the top. Or maybe it's down the bottom. We're right there.
Okay, good enough.
How long does something like this take to do?
Well, that's right now we have, the schedule is, the switchgear has to be replaced, and all of the work that happens outside of the welding lab, the classroom that Bobby Petty currently has at the CTE building has to be done by August the 1st, so that we can go back to school. It just depends. The power outage just depends. It is AEP has to come and unhook the power from the transformer, so the main power is dropped in the building. Then we have to disassemble the entire switchgear, modify the electrical room to meet current code, and build a new switchgear in that room. So I've been telling everyone to be prepared to be without power in the CT building from June 21st until August the 1st.
Oh, no.
Yeah, CTE is going to be shut down for this. I think Megan would gladly let that happen to get the outcome.
How long have we been talking about this? A long time, a long time.
Building what?
Innovation.
Solutions.
Yes, we've been talking about it a long time. I think that this board did recognize early on that the project as it was worded early on needed to be a little more detailed, and allowed me to break it out into 2 phases. This is phase 1. So phase 1 being under budget, I recommend we go, and we need to pull the trigger quickly, because 2 things have to happen for a switchgear replacement. One, there has to be a study that has to commence right away, and then the switchgear has to be custom built. So we had to do that here as well. It was one of the things that really made my forehead sweat. I didn't think we were going to make it. So that's why we went ahead, and the engineer checked the bid submittal today. Everything was to his satisfaction, and the submittal was good to go. So we're recommending to the board that we pull the trigger and move forward with one of the number 1, I think it's 1A.
I was going to say, how long has this been going on? Years.
It's been on this since I've been hired.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure. I've been here 3.5, 4.
This is another victory for Pulaski County Public Schools.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Shaw? If there are none, is there a motion to move forward with the awarding the bid to FNS Building Innovations and move forward with the work there at the city?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that motion. I've waited a long time.
It's a good one to make. It's a good one to make, Ms. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Porter?
Ms. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Hurst?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Ms. Cox?
Yes.
Dr. Cash?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And just real quick, what I was talking about with the market, this gives me hope that I was very worried today that this was going to be
Good thing.
bad shape, but it came in under budget.
Yeah, that's a real good thing right there.
Excellent.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
well, brings us to future agenda items at this time. If any requests from the board for a future agenda item?
I don't know that it's an agenda item, but I would like to revisit the 2-hour late start time. Maybe not before March the 15th, and then after March the 15th, it might be a moot point. I hope it is.
Yeah.
But I do know before we've had closed schools or go 2 hours late in March, on up into April sometime.
Yeah.
But once we get back 5 days a week, I really don't see the purpose in having to have that extra hour in the afternoon.
Yeah, it would, what we had originally discussed doing was having virtual for secondary on 2-hour delay and having elementary run on a regular 2-hour delay schedule.
Right.
But then we started getting into issues about not meeting the core instructional hour requirements at the middle school level is the major concern. And when we looked at the failure rates for the first semester, they were abysmal. And we know that part of the reason for that our kids just aren't being successful on the virtual side of things, so we had to try to look for ways to decrease the number of virtual days, especially at the secondary level, and that was really the only solution available that would allow us to still meet the minimum number of 4 hours, because we're just skirting the bare minimum right now with how this year has went. So every hour that we miss is putting us closer to not meeting that requirement.
Well, we got to do it, we got to do it, but I think
Yeah.
once we do it back full time, that maybe we can go around that.
Yeah, I think when we're back 5 days a week, if we have to do a 2-hour delay one day, but there would be the pretty good probability that we could change it back to practice of previous to this week.
Any other agenda items that the board would like to see? If not, that takes us to the last item tonight, and that's recognition of citizens. At this time, we would open the floor. If anybody would like to address the board at this time.
I'd like to say that the passage of this equity plan, I do hereby make myself available. I'd like to be appointed to the Pulaski County High School equity team. Ms. Golden, when the time comes, is my representative. I ask for your appointment to that position. If we're
Would anybody else like to address the board this evening? If not, thank you for coming, and we'll adjourn. Thank you.